Hello, my beautiful loves. How are you? I hope you're doing wonderfully well today. I'm going to be going over a magazine that I found in my garage that I did not realize was there. It was hiding in there for the longest time, and we're actually trying to do a clean out of our garage. So I snatched it up because there are just some things that I like to hold on to. For whatever reason, I just never feel comfortable giving it away. And one of those is Time's Disasters That Shook the World. This came out in June 8th, 2012. So over 10 years ago. And I don't think I'll be giving this away. There's a lot of history in this. And it's not just American history, it's world history. So I like to hold on to things like these to look at every so often. So without further ado, let's go ahead and look at this together. So it says history's greatest man-made catastrophes. And many of you will probably remember this. I remember this. This was the Costa Concordia, the cruise ship that went too close to shore, and I believe it hit some rocks underneath and tussled to its side, where I believe there were some deaths. Most were rescued, and if I'm not mistaken, this is the one where the captain of the ship took off on foot to be later caught and tried in court. So it says capsized. The cruise ship Costa Concordia ran aground off Italy's Giglio Island on January 13th, 2012. So this one basically just made the cut because this magazine was published 6 months later. Now we're not going to go over all of these, but we are going to go over a good handful. So let's see here. Disaster at Sea. And that looks like New York City to me. Disaster at sea. Battered, the ocean liner MS Stockholm arrives in New York City with its bow smashed in after its collision with the Italian line ship Andrea Doria on July 25th, 1956, off of Nantucket Island. So from afar, it looks like everything is okay. But look at this. Right there. Look at that. So this was in 1956. Disaster on a maiden voyage. The luxurious ocean liner Titanic collides with an iceberg and sinks on its first journey. I think we, or at least most of us, all know the story of the Titanic. A well sought after liner that only the elite were on, or the very poor at the bottom, as you know, who often worked on the ship. And at the very first journey that it took, it sank to the bottom of the ocean. The Titanic weighed 45,000 tons. It was the largest steamer in the world at that time. The Olympic and the Titanic, the two largest steamers in the world at that time. And here's another photo of the Titanic. A majestic passage nuzzled by assisting rowboats. You can see the tugboats. All aboard. An excited crowd awaits the arrival of Titanic in Queenstown, Ireland on April 11th, where 130 new passengers came aboard the ship, last stop before its transatlantic crossing. The ship was built in Belfast by the firm of Harland and Wolff. Passengers stroll on the ship's second-class promenade. Some of the photographs of life aboard the ship were taken by amateur photographers who disembarked before the luxury liner left Ireland for the United States. So they have some doctored imagery here and actual footage, actual image of passengers being rescued. The Titanic sinks with 1,800 on board. Only 675, mostly women and children, were saved. So you had more passengers who died than those who survived. News of Titanic's fate arrived in New York City early on the morning of April 15th. Throughout the day, large crowds gathered at the White Star Line offices and outside newspaper buildings to read the latest dispatches about the catastrophe. So here it lists some of those who were survivors. So it actually says, of the 2,200 people believed to be on board the Titanic, 1,517 perished and more than 700 survived. A number of the ship's officers, following standard procedure for emergencies, took command of lifeboats to ensure the passengers would be picked up safely and thus survived to become the key eyewitnesses to the sinking. The most senior crew member to survive was the second officer, Charles H. Lightower, who directed the boarding of the lifeboats on the port side of the ship. Swept into the sea as the ship went down, he was almost pulled under by the vortex created by the sinking vessel. But a blast of hot air from a ventilator drove him back to surface. He later provided testimony about Titanic's last moment before committees of inquiry in both Britain and the US. So he would have perished had it not been for that hot air that propelled him forward to the surface. From legend to reality, the remains of the Titanic. And here are some items they found. They were able to retrieve from the sunken ship. You have the watch. There was a spoon over here. A chair. And I think there's some serving bowls. China plates, yep. And a propeller. Okay, so now we also have the Great Lakes Mystery on November 10th, 1975. What caused the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald? I don't know if I know about this one. The Split Rock Lighthouse beacon on the coast of Lake Superior in Minnesota, now decommissioned, is lit up each year on November 10th to commemorate the sinking of the Edmund Fitzgerald. At far left is the ship. Its bell was recovered in 1995. From 1975 to 1995. 20 years later, they discovered the bell of the ship. Disasters in the air. Help is on the way. Survivors of the crash of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571 hailed their rescuers. After their turboprop airplane crashed in the Andes on October 13, 1972, the 16 survivors out of the 45 on the plane waited for 72 days with no heat and little food until help arrived. They resorted to cannibalism to stay alive. I remember they did a documentary on this one, or movie of this one. I want to say it's called Alive. So this one here, I feel like this one is familiar to me. The Flight of the Hindenburg, May 6, 1937. I think I heard of this one. A titan of the skies burst into flames, bringing the airship age to an end. And I'm going to skip over to show you what the blast looks like. Look at this. Wait, there we go. That is jaw-dropping. That is scary. The pictures compare a time-lapse sequence of the disaster. At left, the stern was the first section to burst into flames. It's over here. Close to the mooring mast, the bow went down and the entire ship collapsed and burned to the ground. Navy personnel are joined by civilians to aid a badly burned victim of the crash. Naval Air Station Lakehurst in central New Jersey was opened in 1921 to host experiments with lighter-than aircraft, but Navy engineers ended up using German-designed Zeppelins. An NBC radio broadcast team reports from the site of the crash above with the ship's duralumin main rings visible in the background. Duralumin main rings visible in the background. At right, bodies of the German passengers and crews were returned to their homeland, their coffins draped with swastikas, where they were given a memorial service and hailed as heroes by the Nazi regime. I'm going to repeat back the year for you. This was what? 1937. So if you think about that era and that time, you know, this is what was prevalent over there in Germany. Crash at an air show. September 6, 2011. A vintage fighter plane dives into a crowd, killing 11 people. Out of control. At left, the P-51 Mustang piloted by Jimmy Leeward dives straight into the ground and in front of a crowded grandstand. The World War II aeroplane left a crater 8 feet wide by 3 feet deep. Wow. That's so sad. Inferno in the Windy City, October 8th through the 10th, 2-day event in 1871. The Great Chicago Fire paves the way for a new modern metropolis. At left, the city center after the fire. Above, an artist portrays citizens fleeing the blaze across the Randall Street Bridge. Stampede in a nightclub, November 28, 1942. A fire at Boston's largest dance hall kills 492 people. I don't think I've heard of this one. At left, Coconut Grove MC Mickey Alpert in tuxedo greets servicemen performing at Irving Berlin's show. This is the Army. 30 minutes before the blaze erupted, all survived. At center, firefighters clean up the ruins of the club's bar. On right, a bystander carries a woman who survived the flames away from the club. So this killed 492 people. Tragedy under the Big Top, July 6, 1944. A circus fire kills 169 people and takes a great show off the road. Ringdom Brothers in Barnum and Bailey. Many spectators were able to escape the blazing ring top, but not all survived. Wow. I don't think I've heard of this one. Tears of a Clown. Emmett Kelly, the Ringling's Troop beloved Trump Tramp Clown was one of the company's biggest draws. A photographer caught him carrying water to fight the fire, and the picture ran in newspapers across the country, leading Americans to christen the tragedy the day the clowns cried. There he is, right there. And there's this pail of water. Disasters of the environment. I remember this one. Dirty work. A volunteer collects solidified oil sludge on the coast of Ons Island of northwest Spain. On November 13, 2002, a tank burst into the oil tanker's Prestige during a storm. 6 days later, the ship split in two and sank, releasing more than 60,000 tons of oil that polluted the coastline off Spain and Portugal. The good news, residents along the coast organized a cleanup campaign that largely mitigated the damage from the spill. And honestly, that's how it's got to be. If we can, we come together. Of hurricanes and humans. Now this one talks about the Hurricane Katrina. And I remember it passing off the Gulf side of Florida before it curved back and went up to New Orleans. I was on the Atlantic side of Florida, and we were watching it because even something on the Gulf, the bands will still hit the eastern side of Florida. And so we felt it, but we didn't get the brunt of it. And honestly, we thought it was just going to die down. And that thing just magnified once it went back. It curved, went into Florida, curved back into the Gulf. And that's where it just picked up energy, picked up speed, picked up force, and did its damage on New Orleans. So it was even a shock to us because we watched it. We were prepared for it. We had the warnings, and then we said normally it would just die down. It would just go through Florida. It decided to curve. So Hurricane Katrina, August 29th, 2005. Bad weather and bad planning devastate New Orleans. And many residents and even meteorologists and land engineers, they would say it wasn't really the storm so much that did the damage. It was more so the poor construction of the levees, and the levees breaking and flooded the whole city, so much so it went above ceilings of many homes, and people were climbing up into their attics and drowned in their attics. And if you guys remember, a lot of you may remember the pictures, a lot of people were on the roofs of their ceiling because when they realized the water was coming into their attic, how much higher can you go than onto your roof? And after that, if you're not rescued, you can perish. So a lot of people were rescued from the roofs of their homes. This was just awful. This one really brought me to tears. I remember, just watching it on the news and bringing me to tears. And I visited New Orleans back in 2018 or 2016, I think, or 2017. And you can still see there's a lot of areas that still were not rebuilt. There's a hospital that's just was never rebuilt. Windows are smashed out right there in downtown. And a lot of places never recovered from that. And you're talking about 10 years later. At the time when I went to visit, it was more than 10 years. And a lot of places had still yet to recover. All right, we'll do one more. Fukushima's flaws. March 11th, 2011. Japan's killer tsunami cripples a nuclear power plant. Ouch. Japan's ordeal. At left, residents of Hirono near Fukushima don protective garments before returning to their homes inside the exclusion zone to retrieve personal items in June. Above left, the plant leaks radioactive stream on March 14th. And at right, a resident of Naraha inside the exclusion zone has her radiation level checked on March 16th, 5 days after the tsunami hit the plant. Wow. Now that is just, one after another. From trying to survive a tsunami and be safe in a tsunami to now have it hit a nuclear power plant. It's really hard to escape something like that, the effects of something like that. And usually those effects are not shown until years later. It's cancer, genetic mutations. So if you have children within that time, wow. I mean, a lot of these things, some of these can be prevented. A lot of them cannot. But I think at the end of the day, it just reminds you to count your blessings. And whenever you think you have it bad, there's others who have it worse. So, and that's what I find that gets me through things like this, is when I'm feeling down, is that I pray and direct positive energy to someone else, because there's always someone else suffering more than what I'm going through, even though I think it's like the hardest, heaviest thing on me, right? There's other people that have to deal with things unforeseen, unexpected, and have to make lifestyle changes, struggling with diagnosis, many things. So, just count your blessings and be grateful, just like I'm grateful for all of you guys. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Talk to you. Bye, guys.